Ladies and gentlemen, you see, most people think transformation happens when they're awake, but the truth is your greatest transformation happens while you sleep. Your conscious mind might shut down, but your subconscious mind never clocks out. It's working the night shift of your destiny, taking every word, every thought, every belief, and building your reality brick by brick. So here's the question, what are you feeding it? Because if you sleep with worry, you'll wake up with weight. But if you sleep with wisdom, you'll rise with wealth. You see, most people think that when they go to sleep, everything shuts off: the mind, the emotions, the thoughts. But the truth is, your body sleeps, yet your mind keeps creating. Your subconscious never rests. It works the night shift of your destiny. While you're lying in bed, eyes closed, your subconscious is replaying every thought, every fear, every word you've spoken during the day, and deciding what becomes real for you. That's why the thoughts you entertain before sleep are not just casual, they are commands to your reality. The mind doesn't judge between true or false. It simply accepts repetition as truth. When you go to sleep filled with worry, doubt, or guilt, your subconscious gets programmed to produce more of the same. You wake up feeling heavy, as if the night didn't bring rest, but rehearsed your struggles. But when you choose to surround your mind with powerful words of faith, purpose, and abundance, your subconscious begins to align with a higher truth, a divine pattern that shifts everything in your favor. Your mind never sleeps, it just changes gears. During the day, your conscious mind is the driver, busy thinking, analyzing, questioning. But at night, your subconscious takes the wheel, quietly shaping your future based on the beliefs you've planted. The words you listen to while you sleep are like seeds dropped into fertile soil. They don't sprout instantly, but in time, they grow into habits, expectations, and outcomes. That's why people who feed themselves positivity while they rest start to notice that they wake up differently, more confident, more at peace, more focused. Their world begins to reflect the soundtrack that played through the night. If you've ever had the same negative situation happen again and again, that's not coincidence, it's programming. Your subconscious keeps replaying what it believes is normal for you. So if you believe struggle is part of your story, you'll attract struggle. If you believe peace and prosperity are natural to you, you'll begin to experience them without force. You don't have to work harder to change your life. You have to think better before you sleep. Because in that silent, still moment before rest, your subconscious is wide open, ready to receive instruction. That's the moment when transformation begins, not with effort, but with exposure to the right frequency of thought. Faith begins where logic ends. Your conscious mind says, I don't see how this can happen. But your subconscious doesn't need to see how, it just needs to believe. When you fill your mind with faith-based truth, when you let words of abundance and peace echo as you drift to sleep, something powerful begins to shift. Your subconscious starts creating evidence to match the belief you've accepted. You start to notice doors opening, opportunities appearing, clarity increasing, not because the world changed overnight, but because you did. Faith gives your subconscious permission to move beyond limitations. It takes what seems impossible and treats it as inevitable. Repetition is the language of the subconscious. You can't just declare something once and expect transformation. What you hear again and again becomes what you expect. What you expect becomes what you attract. That's why listening while you sleep is so powerful. It's effortless repetition. Your subconscious doesn't argue, it absorbs. When you consistently expose yourself to affirmations of abundance, peace, love, and success, those truths begin to override the patterns of fear and failure that were running in the background. It's not magic, it's mental conditioning. Just like the body gets stronger with repetition, the mind gets reprogrammed through consistency. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. The outer world mirrors the inner conversation. Every word you say about yourself, every image you hold in your mind is a blueprint your subconscious follows. If you want a different life, you must become a different frequency. That begins by changing what your mind consumes while you sleep. When you feed it the vibration of success, gratitude, and faith, your subconscious starts to calibrate your reality to that same energy. Suddenly, you're not chasing blessings. Blessings are drawn to you. You don't have to force opportunities. They recognize you because you've become aligned with them. Alignment always outperforms effort. You can grind all day, but if your subconscious believes you're unworthy, it will sabotage your progress at night. But when your inner belief system agrees with your goals, success starts flowing without resistance. The ideas, the people, the timing, they all begin to line up. The work feels lighter because you're no longer fighting your own programming. You're no longer trying to create from exhaustion. You're creating from agreement. The moment your subconscious accepts abundance as normal, your conscious life begins to reflect it as natural. So change the soundtrack that plays while you sleep. Replace worry with words of power, fear with faith, limitation with love. Let your nights become a classroom for your subconscious. Let every whispered affirmation become a seed of transformation, because the words you feed your mind while you rest will soon become the world you walk through when you rise. Faith begins where logic ends. Logic tells you to measure, calculate, predict, and control. Faith tells you to trust, believe, and act before you see the result. The human mind is trained to depend on what it can explain, But the spirit knows that what you can't explain often holds the greatest power. Logic can build a plan, but faith builds the person who carries it out. The difference between those who dream and those who live their dreams is not intelligence, it's belief. Belief that what cannot yet be seen can still be achieved. When you go to sleep, your conscious mind finally stops arguing. And that's when faith gets a chance to speak. Your subconscious doesn't question the possibility. It simply accepts the idea you give it. If you feed it faith-filled thoughts, it begins constructing a reality that matches your belief even while you rest. Faith is not a denial of reality. It's a declaration of a higher one. It's looking at the facts but choosing the truth. The fact may be that you're struggling financially, but the truth is that abundance already exists in the universe waiting for you to align with it. The fact may be that you're tired, but the truth is that you are capable of renewal. The fact may be that doors are closed, but the truth is that faith creates doors where there are only walls. Logic stops at what it can prove, but faith proceeds based on what it knows. When you allow faith to lead the way, you release your mind from the limits of human reasoning and enter into a space of divine creativity. You start to sense possibilities that logic could never calculate. Most people lose faith because they keep looking for evidence before they believe. They wait to see progress before they commit to persistence. But faith works in reverse. You must believe first, only then does the evidence appear. Faith is the blueprint that reality follows. If your blueprint is small, your results will be small. But if your faith expands beyond what you can see, the results will follow that expansion. The universe rearranges itself to accommodate the vibration of belief. Every thought you hold in faith becomes a magnet for the circumstance that matches it. You don't need to know how it will happen. You only need to know that it will. Faith is the fuel of creation. Every invention, every business, every movement that changed the world began as an idea someone refused to doubt. While logic saw risk, faith saw reward. Logic asks for guarantees, faith gives assurance. Logic measures effort, faith multiplies outcome. Faith is the invisible architect of visible success. The person who walks by faith operates in a different rhythm. They don't need to see the entire staircase. They just take the first step knowing the next one will appear. They don't operate from fear of failure because they understand that every delay is simply preparation for a bigger manifestation. Faith doesn't require proof. It produces proof. It takes the invisible and makes it inevitable. That's why when you listen to words of faith while you sleep, you are literally training your subconscious to expect miracles. You're not just calming your mind. You're reprogramming your entire belief system. The words of faith you feed your subconscious become instructions for manifestation. Your mind begins to interpret challenges differently. What once looked like an obstacle now looks like a setup for elevation. Your faith rewires your reaction. Instead of panic, you respond with peace. Instead of resistance, you respond with readiness. That's when life begins to flow in your favor because you're no longer living from fear, but from faith. Logic says work harder. Faith says align deeper. Logic says wait for the opportunity. Faith says create one. Logic says be realistic. Faith says be obedient to what you know in your heart. The greatest miracles always happen in the space where faith outpaces understanding. When your subconscious mind is immersed in faith-filled thoughts, it stops rehearsing defeat and starts expecting victory. That expectation shifts your vibration. You begin to attract people, resources, and ideas that resonate with your belief. Success becomes effortless because faith eliminates friction. You're no longer chasing outcomes, you're walking in agreement with them. Faith redefines reality. It doesn't ignore what is, it speaks to what can be. When you allow faith to saturate your subconscious while you sleep, you are building a new mental environment, one where possibilities multiply and limits dissolve. Your subconscious starts constructing a future consistent with what you believe, not what you fear. It begins identifying opportunities that your conscious mind would have overlooked. Faith sharpens your spiritual vision, helping you see connections and patterns that logic could never piece together. Every night you go to sleep in faith, your mind works through the dark to prepare light for your next day. Faith is not loud, it's steady. It doesn't beg, it declares. It doesn't compete, it completes. It's not about emotion, but conviction. Faith knows that what's meant for you cannot miss you, and what's not meant for you cannot hold you. When you rest in that knowing, anxiety disappears. You begin to live from assurance, not effort. The energy of faith attracts order where there was chaos and clarity, where there was confusion. It moves mountains not because it's forceful, but because it's focused. The moment you stop needing to understand every detail is the moment faith begins to create the outcome you've been praying for. Repetition creates reality. Whatever you repeat long enough becomes a pattern, and whatever becomes a pattern becomes your life. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to what you mean, it responds to what you repeat. Every thought, every word, every emotion that you cycle through again and again gets accepted as truth by your subconscious. That truth becomes a belief, that belief becomes a behavior, and that behavior becomes your destiny. People spend years trying to change outcomes without realizing that outcomes are simply the echo of repetition. If you keep repeating limitation, you will keep reliving it. If you keep repeating empowerment, you will keep experiencing it. The subconscious doesn't care if what you repeat is good or bad, right or wrong, empowering or destructive. It simply takes repetition as instruction and turns it into habit. The most powerful tool you have for transformation isn't force or willpower, it's consistency. You don't have to make giant leaps every day. You just have to keep repeating the right words, the right thoughts, the right focus until they replace the old patterns that no longer serve you. The mistake most people make is expecting immediate change from short bursts of effort. They read a book once, listened to a speech once, say an affirmation once, and then wonder why nothing happens. But change doesn't come from information, it comes from saturation. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to what it hears once, it responds to what it hears continually. The words you whisper to yourself over and over again are programming your next chapter. Repetition is how you train your spirit to believe. When you first start saying something like, "I am worthy," your mind might resist it. It sounds strange because it conflicts with years of negative programming. But as you continue to repeat it, the resistance weakens and your mind begins to adjust. Soon your subconscious starts to recognize those words as familiar, and familiarity becomes belief. Once belief settles in, your entire life begins to organize itself around that new identity. You stop attracting people and situations that reflect your old limitations and start drawing in experiences that align with your new frequency. The mind is always listening, and it's always creating even when you think you're idle. That's why repetition works even while you sleep. Listening to positive affirmations, spiritual truths, and messages of abundance during sleep is one of the most effective ways to rewire your inner world. During that state, your conscious mind is quiet, so there's no argument, no debate, no doubt. The subconscious absorbs without resistance. Every repeated phrase becomes a new possibility. Every affirmation becomes a seed, and with enough repetition, those seeds grow into confidence, focus, and peace. The repetition of empowering thoughts while you sleep trains your subconscious to expect greatness as your natural state. What was once uncomfortable becomes familiar, and what was once impossible starts to feel inevitable. Repetition builds momentum. Every time you repeat a word of faith, a thought of gratitude, or a declaration of power, you're strengthening a new neural pathway in your brain. Over time, those pathways become highways and your mind begins to travel them automatically. That's how new habits are formed, not through dramatic effort, but through quiet repetition. You can't plant a seed once and expect a harvest. You have to water it daily. The same principle applies to your thoughts. The harvest of your life will always mirror the frequency of your repetition. If you keep saying, "I can't," you build a wall. If you keep saying, "I will," you build a bridge. Repetition also works through environment. The sounds, conversations, and content that surround you are shaping your subconscious even when you're not paying attention. You might think you're simply watching a show or scrolling through your phone, but everything you expose yourself to is being repeated back to your mind. That's why it's critical to control your atmosphere. Surround yourself with voices that remind you of your value, with sounds that elevate your spirit, with words that reinforce your vision. What you repeatedly allow in will determine what consistently comes out. Your results will never rise higher than the quality of your repetition. The law of repetition doesn't discriminate. It multiplies whatever you give it. If you constantly feed it fear, it will multiply fear. If you consistently feed it faith, it will multiply faith. Your subconscious is neutral. It's your responsibility to give it the right material to work with. The repetition of the right message creates the foundation for effortless action. Once your subconscious is convinced of a truth, it will direct your actions in harmony with that truth without you having to force it. That's why certain people seem naturally confident or disciplined. It's not natural, it's practiced. They've repeated success habits so often that success became their default mode. When you understand that repetition is the architect of your destiny, you start to take every word seriously. You stop repeating complaints and start repeating gratitude. You stop rehearsing failure and start rehearsing faith. You stop reliving old memories of defeat and start replaying visions of victory. You begin to understand that the mind doesn't distinguish between imagination and reality. It just multiplies whatever is most consistent. Repetition turns imagination into identity and identity into experience. What you do occasionally creates movement, but what you do repeatedly creates transformation. The secret is not in intensity, but in consistency. The quiet power of repetition can rebuild any life, reframe any belief, and reshape any destiny. When directed with faith and focus, you don't get what you want. You get what you are. Life doesn't give you according to your wishes. It gives you according to your vibration. Every desire you have is a reflection of the energy you're carrying, and the universe responds not to what you say, but to what you believe. You can want wealth and still think poor. You can want love and still feel unworthy. You can want peace and still dwell on chaos. The subconscious mind mirrors who you are being, not what you're asking for. When you change your internal state, your external circumstances rearrange to match it. That's why most people stay stuck. They're trying to change results without changing identity. They're trying to act rich while still thinking broke, trying to attract better while still believing they don't deserve it. The universe reads energy, not effort, and it aligns outcomes with authenticity. Every thought, emotion, and word sends out a signal, and that signal calls back experiences of the same frequency. If your inner dialogue is filled with doubt, life will reflect situations that confirm your doubt. If your inner world is filled with gratitude, life will amplify blessings that match it. The mind is not a container, it's a transmitter. It broadcasts who you are and attracts evidence to validate it. You don't become successful by chasing success. You become successful by embodying the mindset of someone who already is. The way you think, speak, and move begins to reflect abundance before it arrives, and then it has no choice but to show up. Your identity is the thermostat of your life. You can turn up your goals all you want, but if your self-image stays the same, your results will drop back to match it. People wonder why their lives fluctuate. They experience a breakthrough and then slowly drift back to old patterns. It's because their internal temperature didn't change. They had a moment of motivation, not a transformation of identity. Real change happens when the subconscious mind adopts a new standard, when it decides, this is who I am now. From that moment, your actions, habits, and even your environment begin to adjust to match the new belief. The subconscious mind is always listening to how you talk about yourself. When you say, I'm not good with money, your subconscious takes that as instruction. When you say, I attract opportunities easily, it begins to create conditions to make that true. The words you speak shape the identity you reinforce. You can't say you want freedom and then speak like a prisoner of your past. You can't say you want growth and keep rehearsing excuses. The language of your life reveals the level of your identity. To change what you attract, you must first change how you describe yourself to yourself. Identity is not built by what you do once, it's built by what you do repeatedly. The more you think, speak, and act like the person you intend to become, the faster your subconscious accepts that identity as real. Once it accepts it, it starts filtering information and opportunities through that new belief. You begin to notice chances that were always there but hidden by doubt. You start to move differently, make decisions faster, and trust your intuition more. What once felt forced becomes natural because you're no longer pretending you're becoming. You don't have to convince the world when your subconscious is already convinced. You attract what aligns with your sense of normal. If scarcity feels normal, you will unconsciously recreate it no matter how much you earn. If abundance feels normal, you will multiply it effortlessly. That's why changing your reality isn't about chasing more. It's about redefining what feels natural to you. When peace, prosperity, and purpose feel like your baseline, your subconscious does everything it can to maintain that baseline. The universe responds by sending confirmation after confirmation, solidifying your new reality. This is why some people seem to live in constant flow. They've trained their subconscious to see abundance as ordinary and lack as foreign. You become magnetic when your inner world and your desires are in agreement. When you say you want success but feel unworthy, you create resistance. But when your emotions, thoughts, and expectations all vibrate at the same frequency, attraction becomes effortless. The energy of alignment pulls things to you that chasing never could. People call it luck, but it's really congruence. You don't have to force opportunities when your energy declares you're ready. Everything that belongs to your new identity begins to recognize you. Transformation starts with awareness. Begin to notice the stories you tell yourself about who you are. Pay attention to the emotions that repeat most often. Those emotions are the evidence of your identity. If you constantly feel anxious about money, it means your subconscious is attached to scarcity. If you constantly feel confident about your goals, it means your subconscious believes in abundance. Changing who you are means changing the emotional patterns you live in. When you elevate your inner vibration, you automatically elevate your outer experience. Every desire is an invitation to grow into a higher version of yourself. The goal isn't to get what you want. It's to become the kind of person who naturally attracts it. If you want peace, become peace. If you want love, become love. If you want abundance, become abundance. The moment your subconscious fully accepts a new identity, your external world begins to shift without struggle. You don't have to chase transformation when you embody it. The outer world simply adjusts itself to the new frequency you have become. Subconscious alignment creates effortless success. Most people spend their entire lives trying to force results through willpower, yet still feel stuck because their subconscious beliefs are pulling in the opposite direction. The conscious mind sets goals, but the subconscious decides what's possible. When those two are not in harmony, progress feels like pushing a boulder uphill. You can plan, grind, and hustle all you want, but if deep inside you don't believe you deserve success, you'll find a way to sabotage it. That's why true transformation doesn't start with action, it starts with alignment. When your subconscious agrees with your vision, success stops being a struggle and starts becoming a natural expression of who you are. The subconscious is like the engine of your life, running in the background, directing your emotions, habits, and behaviors without asking permission. It doesn't respond to force, it responds to frequency. If your inner beliefs vibrate at fear, no amount of effort can produce peace. If your inner beliefs vibrate at lack, no amount of work can create lasting abundance. Effort without alignment leads to exhaustion, but alignment turns effort into ease. Once the subconscious is trained to expect prosperity, it begins to guide you toward it instinctively. Your intuition sharpens, your timing improves, and opportunities seem to appear without strain. What you used to chase begins to find you. Alignment begins with awareness. You can't align what you don't acknowledge. You must first recognize the beliefs running in your subconscious. Listen to your language. Watch how you react when faced with success. Do you feel excitement or fear? Do you think you can handle it or that it's too much for you? Those reactions reveal what's living inside your subconscious. Many people pray for abundance while carrying beliefs that reject it. They want to be seen but are afraid of judgment. They want more money but believe money is evil. They want love but don't feel worthy of it. The subconscious can't create what it believes is unsafe. To achieve alignment, you must replace contradiction with conviction. You can't keep declaring abundance while secretly expecting failure. You can't keep saying you're ready while feeling undeserving. Alignment happens when your conscious desires and subconscious expectations become one voice. That voice carries power because it's not divided. It doesn't waver between belief and doubt. It declares with authority. When you reach that level of inner agreement, your energy becomes magnetic. You start to notice that what once required force now flows. The people, ideas, and circumstances that resonate with your new vibration begin to orbit your life naturally. Your subconscious doesn't care about your intentions. It responds to your emotional truth. If you say, I am successful, but feel insecure, the subconscious believes the emotion, not the words. That's why emotion is the language of alignment. The feeling must match the affirmation. The more you practice embodying the emotion of success, gratitude, confidence, fulfillment, the more your subconscious accepts it as real. Once it accepts it, it begins shaping reality to match that feeling. You'll start making choices that align with that inner truth without overthinking. You'll move from reaction to creation. That's when success stops being hard work and becomes natural flow. People often mistake struggle for progress. They think the harder something feels, the more valuable it must be. But in truth, struggle is usually a sign of resistance. When you're in alignment, the same work feels lighter, clearer, and more inspired. You still act, but your actions have precision. You're not throwing effort in every direction, hoping something works. You're following inner guidance that knows exactly where to go. Alignment doesn't remove action, it refines it. It turns wasted motion into intentional movement. That's why aligned people seem to accomplish more with less time and less stress. The subconscious mind can be trained through repetition and emotion. Listening to affirmations, meditating on new beliefs, and visualizing desired outcomes are all ways of feeding your subconscious new instructions. Over time, these practices dissolve old limiting patterns and replace them with empowering ones. The key is consistency. You can't reprogram a belief you only visit once a week. Every day you must remind your subconscious of who you are becoming. The more consistent the message, the faster the alignment. When the subconscious finally agrees, there's no internal resistance left to fight. That's when success starts showing up seemingly without effort because the internal barriers are gone. Alignment is not about forcing the universe to give you something. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally receives it. You don't need to beg for opportunities when your energy is already aligned with them. You don't need to chase success when you become the embodiment of it. The right connections, ideas, and moments begin to converge in perfect timing. That timing is not luck, it's resonance. Everything that matches your frequency is drawn to you because alignment eliminates interference. When your subconscious and conscious mind are in agreement, there is no split energy, no self-sabotage, no confusion. You move with clarity because every part of you is saying yes to the same direction. The universe recognizes that signal and responds immediately. Life begins to flow because you're no longer doubting, hesitating, or resisting. Every decision feels guided, every step feels supported, and every challenge feels purposeful. This is the essence of effortless success, not the absence of work, but the presence of harmony. When your mind and spirit are aligned, the outcome is not forced, it's inevitable. Change the soundtrack, and you'll change the scene. The reality you live in is built on the rhythm of what you repeatedly hear and believe. Every word that enters your ears becomes a note in the song your subconscious plays back to you. Most people don't realize that the soundtrack of their life has been playing on repeat since childhood. The voices that told you what you could or couldn't do, the opinions that shaped your confidence, the doubts that were planted when you failed, those sounds became the background music of your existence. And you cannot live a life that is greater than the sound you listen to most often. If your life feels stuck, it's not because the stage is broken, it's because the soundtrack hasn't changed. Every day you are being programmed by sound, your own voice, the voices around you, the music you listen to, the content you consume. Words carry vibration and vibration creates reality. The mind doesn't distinguish between what is said intentionally or accidentally. It absorbs whatever it hears repeatedly. If you fill your atmosphere with talk of fear, limitation, and defeat, your subconscious records that as your truth. If you fill it with words of power, gratitude, and faith, your subconscious begins to construct a different experience. The soundtrack you listen to becomes the script your life performs. The reason many people struggle to see change is that they're trying to rewrite their story while still listening to the same old music. You can't play a melody of abundance while keeping a rhythm of doubt. You can't speak of success during the day and fall asleep to words of worry at night. The subconscious mind is like a recording studio. It keeps layering sounds, thoughts, and emotions on top of one another until they blend into your identity. If the dominant sound is negativity, even moments of inspiration will get drowned out. But the moment you begin to change the sound, the atmosphere of your life starts to shift. When you listen to empowering messages, affirmations, or faith-based truths while you sleep, you are literally changing your subconscious playlist. Your conscious mind might be resting, but your subconscious is wide awake, absorbing every word, every tone, every vibration. Those sounds bypass your critical filters and go straight into the deepest layers of belief. Over time, those new words begin to overwrite the old programming. You start waking up thinking differently, feeling lighter, moving with confidence you didn't have before. The sound becomes part of your spirit, and your actions begin to align with the new rhythm. The human mind is an echo chamber. It keeps repeating whatever it hears most often. That's why silence itself can be powerful when used intentionally. If you can't find words of truth to listen to, remove words of negativity altogether. Quiet the noise long enough for your inner voice to find its own frequency. Once you create space, you can fill it with something better. Begin to curate your auditory environment as carefully as you curate your diet. Don't just feed your body well, feed your mind sound that strengthens you. Let your nights be filled with the vibration of growth, love, and abundance so that your mornings rise to match it. Changing the soundtrack also means being intentional with the people you allow to speak into your life. Every conversation leaves a trace. If you constantly surround yourself with those who complain, criticize, and compare, their energy will mix with yours until you begin to think like them. But if you spend time with voices that uplift, challenge, and inspire, your frequency will rise to meet theirs. The company you keep determines the chorus your life sings. Protect your ears like you protect your dreams, because both are gates to your destiny. There's a sound of victory and a sound of defeat, and your subconscious knows the difference. When you consistently feed it the sound of victory, it begins to anticipate success even before it happens. You start walking with assurance because the music playing in your mind already confirms the outcome. You don't wait for proof to believe, you believe until proof appears. The sound you choose to live by becomes the prophecy of your future. Every word carries a seed, and repeated sound is how those seeds grow. If you want a different harvest, you must change the sound of the soil. Music, words, and affirmations aren't just noise, they're spiritual tools. They tune your emotions, influence your decisions, and direct your focus. The right sound can shift your state instantly. It can move you from fear to faith, from confusion to clarity, from passivity to purpose. That's why successful people guard their input. They know that a distracted soundtrack leads to a distracted life. Every time you press play on something negative, you're teaching your subconscious what to expect from tomorrow. Every time you choose something uplifting, you're giving it permission to create something greater. You have the power to edit your internal playlist. Replace the noise of limitation with the harmony of belief. Replace the words of others that tore you down with your own words that lift you up. Begin each day with sound that reminds you of who you are, and end each night with sound that reinforces what you're becoming. When your subconscious begins to play a new tune, your external world starts to dance to it. The scenery changes because the song has changed. What once felt heavy begins to flow, and what once seemed impossible starts to move in rhythm with your faith. The sound you choose to believe in becomes the life you begin to live.